Welcome back. I'm the Dr. Bob Lee, and our next guest is a staff writer for the Marshall Project and joins us to discuss their We Are Witnesses project. We welcome Nicole Lewis to the show. Nicole, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Tell us all about it, Nicole. You're a staff writer, and you've been writing for the Marshall Project. Tell us about that first.
Sure. So the Marshall Project was founded in 2014 with the central idea that the criminal justice system was broken, that it needed to be reformed, and that the first step often on that process is just having factual, accurate information about all the different ways that it goes wrong, that things break down. And so that was the vision, to create and sustain a sense of urgency about criminal justice in this country. And We Are Witness was a project basically designed to tell and explain and show the human cost of the criminal justice system. So often we hear all these numbers and statistics when we talk about criminal justice and incarceration. There are 2.2 million people locked up, a million people in jails across the country, $80 billion a year being spent on prison. Yeah. People in cages, but that's only like a small part of the story. And so We Are Witness, started with this premise that there are millions of Americans
affected by the prison system.
That's right, who have contact, either direct contact, they're incarcerated, they work in the system, or they have family members, they're judges, right? The actual total universe is much, much bigger. And so we wanted to hear their stories.
And of course, there's probation. You heard the story of Rashad Brooks. He was on probation, so he really didn't want. He was trying to do well for his family and everything. So that may have been one of the reasons why he ran, and that escalated into something ugly, and tragic.
I mean, I think a lot of people don't know that if you spend time in prison, you come out on probation, you're on parole, that for future contact with the police, right? Drinking alcohol in some cases can send you right back to prison. And so, you saw that video of him kind of talking about what it felt like and what it meant for him to be ensnared in this system. And We Are Witness, it takes that same approach, right? Listening directly to people who have this firsthand experience, this knowledge, to illuminate parts of what's going on that we might not have ever heard before.
And he was trying to climb out of the system. He was trying to get his life together. He wanted to do well. He was celebrating his daughter's birthday or whatever it was. And, he was just trying to do the right thing and climb out. But it was like so difficult these days for people on probation to get out of it.
Yeah.
People wrapped up in the system to get out of it.
That's right. What we sort of think about is a system of state surveillance, where people are, in some cases, on ankle monitors in some states, where your movement is tracked and you have an understanding of where you should be and where you shouldn't be. In some cases, people are paying into a system in order to have those monitors on, checking in with their probation, their parole officer, following all kinds of rules. There's a lot of things that goes along with being on probation.
So Nicole, tell us about the We Are Witnesses series.
The We Are Witnesses really strives to document some of these more, personal, human challenges. One of them out of our New York series, where we sat down with Eric Garner's daughter. Think about, right? Here she is, someone who's lost her father, and the video of his death is spread all across the internet. Well, there's a young child, right, who was there, who this is her dad, right? And so trying to sort of grapple with the question of what does it mean for her to have had this contact with the criminal justice system? What does it mean to have lost a father, that father figure, that the toll is much more personal, right? It's not just that the police did something wrong, that we need to be thinking about chokeholds, right? That there's a young person who unfortunately she also passed away, but a young person for a moment in time just was without a parent.
And they have the Eric Garner's bill out now, right? Or act, what do they call it, a bill that was passed? It was just passed last week by Governor Cuomo.
Many years later.
Yeah, well, it took about 5 years for them to make a decision on everything too. Um, when we talk about defunding the police department, what does that actually mean?
Sure. So I wrote about this for the Marshall Project, and in the course of my reporting, I thought this one sort of phrase really stood out to me, and it was that abolition is the goal and defund is the strategy. I thought that was really smart. And so often when what I saw was that a lot of people were confused. Okay, defund the police, what does that mean? Why would we do that, right? Who's going to keep us safe? And many of the people who are supporting this movement basically make this argument to say the police actually don't keep us safe. And for Black and brown people, in many instances, they are causing harm, right? So we're thinking of, George Floyd and, Rayshon Brooks, who we were just talking about, right? That these little moments, tiny little incidents where you're using a counterfeit bill or, you're driving drunk, end in a fatality, end in someone being killed. And so they're asking this question of why do we spend so much money every year to uphold and support this method of policing, this system that actually causes harm in certain communities, when we could be taking that money, right? In New York, for example, where I'm from, we spend about $6 billion each year on the NYPD. And so organizers and activists there are saying, let's take some of that money and transfer it into community services and community programs that address what they see as some of the root causes of crime, of violence, of harm, that they want mayors and governors right across the country to be thinking about. How do you end racism, eliminate oppression, create economic opportunity for all people? How do we use that money from the defunding to divert it to some of these programs? And so that's really what this sort of vision or this push, I think, is all about.
I think in New York City, they're using about $1 billion of it, right? The narcotic squad, or the not the ununiformed people.
That's right.
Who ran out, busting people. I forgot what they called them. But they got rid of them and they put them into other areas.
That's right. And so I think what the measure is that there's this, squad of plainclothes police officers who do kind of undercover, work around gangs and drugs and that kind of stuff. And they're being diverted into what we call community-oriented policing. So they're supposed to be focusing on, particular neighborhoods and things like that.
Wow. I wonder how that's going to fare.
Yeah, and I would
well. Community policing is in, though. If you remember way back, they used to know the names of the officers that patrolled your area.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, at the same time, in a lot of the activists and organizers who I've spoken to, who are pushing for defund are saying, community-oriented policing is not the same thing as really giving money to social services. And in fact, they cite, different instances in which police are in neighborhoods, but someone still winds up harmed. And I think the one case that really comes to mind is in New York, where Saheed Vassal, who had a history of mental illness, was seen on the street in Crown Heights, holding a pipe, and he was shot by officers in a neighborhood that had this program. I believe the officers were not part, right? So they didn't know him, but he was known to other officers there, and it still didn't really protect him. And so I think their argument often is we actually need less cops, less opportunities for interaction. That's the sort of preferred course. But it's true in New York, $1 billion being diverted away from traditional policing.
Well, we thank you for all the work that you do. I know you're the youngest organization, the journalism organization, to win the Pulitzer Prize. And we congratulate you guys for that. And thank you for all the work that you guys are doing. Anything that's coming up that we should know about? You want to tell us about?
In terms of the Marshall Project coverage?
Yes.
With stories that we're working on? I don't know. I mean, I think there's so many that I'm just like a flurry in my head. But we've continued to write and continue to write about coronavirus as well. There's a story upcoming about police violence and different kinds of trainings that officers get or don't get that accounts for all the violence that you see. We've got some stories upcoming potentially about gender and policing. So stay tuned for all that.
Okay, great. Thank you for all your work. We really
Thank you.
appreciate you.
Of course.
There she is, Nicole Lewis, staff writer, reporter, The Marshall Project. We appreciate you. I'm going to take a break. I've got more coming up on Open.